Welcome to the Purpose and Purity Podcast. I'm your host, Titania, and I'm here to help you maximize your impact in life through embracing biblical womanhood. Every Tuesday, you'll get actionable and biblical insights on how to overcome sexual strongholds, cultivate an intimate relationship with God, and live out your unique purpose as a disciple maker and girl boss. After the show, the conversation continues in our Purpose and Purity Facebook group. I can't wait to see you there. Hope for women struggling with same-sex attraction. Today, I'm here with my good friend, Amy Riordan. She's here to share her personal journey of walking through same-sex attraction, along with the freedom, healing, and intimacy with Jesus she's gained along the way. Amy thought she was the only Christian woman who struggled with pornography and same-sex attraction, and she felt shame and isolation. But since launching her blog and ministry, Longing for Intimacy, women from all over the world have reached out to say that they're wrestling with these issues as well. Amy's a licensed pastoral counselor with the National Christian Counseling Association, and she's been ministering to women in the areas of identity, shame, trauma, same-sex attraction, and pornography since 2010. So as someone who's also wrestled with same-sex attraction and experienced God's healing and sustaining power in that area, I can tell you that Amy's resources and her testimony today will definitely be an encouragement to you if you struggle with same-sex attraction and homosexuality. So please stick around to hear Amy's testimony and biblical counseling, as well as how you can get a copy of Amy's book, Longing for Intimacy, Hope for Women Struggling with Same-Sex Attraction. Hey, Amy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you've been a real champ helping me get the lighting together and stuff for this interview. So, tell us a little bit about Pennsylvania, which is where you're from, right? I have no clue anything about Pennsylvania. What is Pennsylvania even known for?
Pennsylvania. Well, it's funny because I'm in the Pittsburgh area now, and this is where I was born and raised, and I moved to Philadelphia several years ago, and it's like there's Pittsburgh on one side and nothing in the middle, and then Philadelphia. That's what it feels like. And when I moved to Philadelphia, I thought, okay, they're going to love the Steelers and all of that. No, it's the Eagles. So it's almost like a totally different state. Yeah, no. I'm not a sports person if you can't tell. But now I know. But it's the western side of Pennsylvania and eastern, they're so completely different. It's like two different states, but I'm from this area and I love it here. So
my husband and I are going to have to come and visit you because we love the Philadelphia Eagles, so we'll have to make it out there. You probably won't come with us to a game or something, right?
Well, my husband would like to do that.
Oh, really?
And I have friends out there still, so we can go.
Yeah. Oh, does your husband like football and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. That's what's up. Cool. Mm-hmm. Cool beans. Well, let's go ahead and dive in today. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to struggle with same-sex attraction?
Well, my struggle started when I was 18 years old. I had always liked boys before that, never any thoughts of girls or anything like that until I was 18, and I had a very good friend. She was my best friend who really was helping me through some difficult times in my life. My parents had just gotten separated, which was a complete surprise for me to happen because they never fought in front of us. So I had no idea there were any issues. So that was a very difficult time for me. And she was the one that I started talking to, and really one of the only people that I shared most of what I was dealing with. And we started getting closer and closer and closer. And eventually she was the only person I wanted to hang out with, and I was the only person she wanted to hang out with. And I eventually started having dreams about her, which caught me completely off guard. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on? And I I was convinced I would never tell her. But as I continued to think about the dreams, I didn't tell anybody. I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it. And I thought, well, I guess this is who I am. And I eventually did tell her, and I found out she was feeling the same way about me. I had no idea, and she wasn't going to tell me either if I hadn't have told her. So we kind of discussed, okay, what do we do with this? What are we going to do now? And we ended up getting into a relationship with each other that lasted about 2 years before, honestly, before her parents found out. She had moved to college, and that put some distance in between us. Anyhow, she moved out of state, but then her parents found out and said, we're not paying for your tuition if you keep this up, which now, as a parent myself, I think, okay, I get it now. I understand. But it was devastating for me, because she was not only my best friend, she just became everything to me. So when I lost that relationship, I lost all of the close friendships I had all together in one person. So that's really where it started for me.
I think I mentioned earlier that I have struggled with that as well. I think for me, it started with like just being watching pornography. And the funny thing about pornography is that if you watch pornography is never just the only thing you struggle with. It usually comes with something else. Like it might be masturbation. It might be, and this is what happened to me, as you get desensitized or you slowly start not to be like aroused by regular pornography, you know what I mean? And then you just kind of like, okay, well, this is old. I want to look at something different now, look at different kind of pornography or whatever. And so for me, that started with, well, I don't want to look at this anymore. Let me look at this and see what that's like. And then I think there was this false sense of looking at two women, engage in that, and this false sense of like, oh, they seem like they really have this connection or this bond better than what I've seen in other pornography and things like that, which is completely crazy to be thinking. Like when you really sit back and think about what you're thinking about pornography, it sounds stupid, but yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I thought, and that's how I felt. And so for a long time, I didn't really acknowledge that. I would still, pursue men, or guys would talk to me and stuff like that. But I remember one time I thought about trying to actually, I guess, act on that thought or those feelings I was thinking about. I was at this party and I was drunk and I was acting stupid. And I thought to try to kiss this girl that I knew at the party. And so I tried, but I ended up, the girl's boyfriend and another friend of mine ended up like swooping up on me, like maybe they thought I was going to throw up on her or something. It's so bad. When I think about it, it's so embarrassing. But whatever they thought, they stopped me. And so I remember feeling so embarrassed when they kind of intervened. And from that time on, even though I still would think or still watch, I would never act on it again just because I felt that embarrassment. And I really believe that was really God's grace toward me, because if I can't imagine how far I would have took things if I actually got to kiss her and things like that. So, but yeah, that's just my own story or my own background to that same question. So tell us more about what happened after that, because I know that now I know that you got married. So what happened in between that time and actually your marriage?
Well, it feels like a whole lot of stuff. I started dating someone, a guy, right after her, and he actually watched pornography. I had seen actually one individual scene of pornography. A scene. Is that a word?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had accidentally viewed a scene of pornography at someone's house right around that time that I got into that relationship with my friend. And it was of all women together. And I had never thought of anything like that. I had never even known anything like that existed. And that was really, it played into everything that happened with her as well, because it kind of frightened me, but it kind of brought out a curiosity in me at the same time. But that was my only exposure to pornography before that. But when I started dating this guy, he watched pornography. It was back in the days where you had to rent movies. And I thought, oh, I'm not doing that at first. But then I realized he was watching, or he brought up to me, I don't remember how it happened, but he could get movies with two women in them. And I thought, well, maybe I can do that. So I was almost forcing myself to do this, to see if I could just, I don't know why I would do that. Just, okay, I'm going to do this. And that became our entire relationship. I had no idea what it was doing to me. It was really changing my view of women in general, as pornography does to everybody. But because before I was only attracted to that one girl who was my friend, but this opened up a whole new world for me of just seeing women in a very lustful way. And that's not at all what my relationship was like with my friend. So it just opened up this whole world. And long story short, I actually married him, and that ended for different reasons, not related to all of this, but a very short marriage. And I don't know how to skip over that quickly, but that's a whole other podcast.
Hey, yeah, you can just skip right over it. Yeah. But be comfortable and sharing your story.
But it was a devastating time for me. He actually ended up, after we got divorced, he overdosed on heroin. It was just which was why our marriage wasn't working, and just so many things. And that's around the time I gave my life to Christ. I was raised going to church, but I had no relationship with God at all. And that is when I went back to church to kind of get my life together. And I realized, oh my goodness, I can have a relationship with God. There's so much more to this than I realized. And shortly after that is when I met my husband, Kevin. So just a couple of months before I met him. So that's when things started to, at least at that point, go in a different direction for me.
That's good. Yeah, I had a similar, I can definitely identify with, like, family problems, especially when it's concerning like addictions and stuff like that. So I'm with you when you say that. That's really hard. And yeah, my story too is very tied into, I came to the Lord after I ended up getting out of a relationship that was really hard for me to let go, long story short. But I also, grew up in the church, but never really had that real connection with God or really understood the gospel until that time where God had really allowed me to get in this low place. And that was his grace as well. And I was able to take seriously and consider, just the vanity and just always being caught up in shallow things, like just my relationships and things like that, and just not really being connected with the Father and understanding that there's just so much more. Like you said, there's just this whole world I didn't even know existed, and this love and this intimacy with God that I didn't even know that I could really experience. Like, I didn't know that was a real thing. And so I can definitely identify with this. So tell us more about how, your struggles with the pornography, with the same-sex attraction, how it impacted your marriage after you met Kevin, this wonderful guy, and you are in the Lord. And even as a Christian, you still struggle with this. And I think there's something to be learned even in that for our listeners. But tell us how it impacted your marriage.
Well, in the beginning of our marriage, the same-sex attraction was kind of in the background of my life. I don't even remember dealing with that directly, except that all my friendships with women were always very shallow because I held them very far away from me. I wouldn't get close to anybody unless they were my mom's age. I had so many friends. This is when I lived in the Philadelphia area. I had so many friends who were my mom's age, like all these women, but I knew women my age, but I wouldn't let them in closer. So now I can look back and say, okay, that was definitely still affecting me. But it wasn't until, and actually, before we got married, I told him about the relationship that I had. We had just told each other, we didn't give our lives to Christ until our mid-20s. So we had a lot of stuff in our past. So we told each other everything. And I honestly thought, okay, this is in the past. And I wasn't struggling with pornography at that point either. So I just assumed, okay, that's over. I found a good Christian man and he loves me, I love him. And that was back then. But after I got pregnant with my son and had him, it was a very difficult C-section that I had with him and just a very difficult recovery. I had postpartum depression and didn't even recognize it, which is so interesting because my background then was social work. So I could see things in everybody else but myself, which still is sometimes the issue. But
I think everybody struggles with that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But I just thought I was overwhelmed all the time. I am so overwhelmed and things are just getting worse and worse. And during that time, I started looking at pornography online. And before, it had never been online before. So it opened up a whole different world for me that I could search for very specific things and see videos and just anything that I wanted. And I was just buried in shame because this time I had a relationship with God and I didn't know what to do. And I couldn't stop this time. My husband and I were both very involved in our church at the time, and no one had any idea that I was doing this. I didn't look like the type, which I realize there isn't a type now.
Yeah.
But no one suspected anything. And I didn't know how to tell him until I actually got to the point where I thought I made a mistake marrying him. He wasn't doing anything wrong. This was all me. And I thought I should have been with a woman. And I started planning in my mind, maybe I should leave. And it's only God's grace that was around the time that the Holy Spirit was tapping me on the shoulder. You need to tell Kevin. And I did, even just out of fear of what I would do if I didn't. Because I was going in a whole different direction at that point. And I scared myself into telling him, really. So that's when I told him that I was struggling with porn and lesbian porn is what I was looking at. So that opened up a whole different thing in our marriage, of course.
Yeah, I just thank you so much for being so willing to share about that, because I know there are women out there who are, in these marriages and who do struggle with this, especially now that society is really just, encouraging people to do, even if you're married, if you feel like you've made a mistake, just go for it to leave and things like that. There are women who are thinking these things. And I just think it's so encouraging that you can be honest about, that, how you were feeling. And then I know that it wasn't an easy thing to walk through, especially, alongside your husband, but to just see that you are here and that you are still married and y'all are still together, that in and of itself is hope and just really a miracle, because we know, we've seen it, and a lot of people have seen it, without the Lord, situations like this just don't come out like that. there is no happy ending. There's usually lots of pain, lots of trauma and everything left. So go ahead and, just share with us, a little bit about how you guys work through that, or as much as you feel comfortable to, and just your encouragement and learning from that.
Well, that began a very long road for us, and we're still kind of on that road, I feel like sometimes. I had to really earn back his trust. He was very threatened. First of all, of course, that I was looking at pornography, but second, and even more so, that I was looking at women, because he said, what am I supposed to do with that? And I understand that. There's no way he can compete with that. No way he's not made the same as a woman, and he felt very, very threatened by that. So that was just a challenge for us to really learn to communicate about all of this. And I didn't at the time have anybody that I was going to in the first 2, maybe even 3 years for accountability or anything like that, because I didn't know how to tell another woman or talk to her and tell her that I was struggling with watching lesbian porn. I felt that was hard enough as it was with the porn, but the lesbian porn, I thought, I'm going to scare her away. All my friends, I thought, I can't tell them. So I ended up talking to Kevin about a lot of this, which on one hand it made it difficult for us because it was very hard for him to hear. But on the other hand, he's eventually started understanding more. And I got to the place very quickly where if I even felt like I was hiding anything from him, I just couldn't do it. I can't do that anymore. Anything, I feel like if I have a conversation with someone, that even now, that if I have that in my mind, I don't know what Kevin would think. I have to talk to him. It's now I need to go to him, and we have that. It's not easy talking about these things. It wasn't. It's much easier now. But that helped us in the long run really have a stronger marriage than we would have before, which is crazy, and only God's grace, really. But just learning why I was doing that, and talking about, like God started showing me, was intimacy that I was craving it with the pornography and with a woman, because I thought, how can I have this with a man? I can't have this deep connection with him that I could have with another woman and that I had before. But as we started communicating more, God started showing me that, and Kevin started, I think, even just understanding more that it wasn't him, and it doesn't make it any better, but that this wasn't something that he could have done better or changed. This was something going on in my own heart that I needed to deal with.
Yeah, that's really good. So, and I just want to, from a how can I say, from a standpoint, like me and my husband, we both also had our struggles with pornography. We've shared that with each other, and we're very vocal too with each other as far as when we feel like, if we wanted to watch porn or something like that, we communicate that with each other. And so it's crazy. A lot of times most people think that this kind of redemptive process that you're walking through, and this trust building process that you're walking through, is something really that only men have to go through. But it's that's not true. Women have to go through it as well. And a lot of times too, I think, I just want to say this because I feel led to say this. From a pride aspect, you might feel like, well, why do I have to share what I'm doing this? Why can't I just, why can't he just trust me, or just understand that, I'm going through XYZ, it's got nothing to do with him. But when whether or not it's really about them, which is usually is not really about the spouse, it's more about what you have like going on with your with you watching it and dealing with it. I'm saying it from a personal perspective. Mm-hmm. It's not usually really about the spouse or their fault, and whether they really get that or grasp that up front or not, you still have to be willing to walk through that process, being honest and being accountable to what you do. And so I'm just so glad that you were able to share that with us, because I think that for our women who are listening that are married, that you need to know that. And if you don't already have Christ at the center of your marriage, I know some people sometimes they get married and their spouses aren't Christian. You can continue to be praying for your spouse and be salt and light in your marriage. But for those of you who do have Christian spouses, it's so important that you guys are, walking and trying to demonstrate the gospel even within your marriage. And just from a responsibility aspect, you do have to walk through building that trust back up and being accountable so that you can not only, be free from that sin, but also just get back that intimacy with your spouse, because you do want that. That you're married and that marriage is a picture of God's love for us. So just be open is what I'm trying to say to my married women who are listening and going through that and understanding that you have to build back that trust. So tell us, like, what would you say to women who perhaps they aren't married? We'll get into the marital aspect in a second, but what are some practical steps women can take to start walking in freedom?
Well, my suggestion, I guess there's a couple, to try to find someone that they can talk to. If there's anyone in your life that seems to be trustworthy and a strong Christian woman, I would recommend doing that. I waited, I think, 3 years to do that. And if I could do it over again, I would not have waited that long, because it really made things so much more difficult. But I know for me, the reason why I waited so long is because I didn't know how to tell another woman or one of my friends. I'm a very private person to begin with. So I thought, who am I going to tell, or who can I talk to? I felt like with the pornography and the same-sex attraction, like I am alone in this, which clearly I wasn't, but I thought that I was. And I found someone who went to my church who happened to be a Christian counselor also, who, again, is my mom's age. And I thought, I'm going to take the chance and talk to her. And I told her a little bit. That's what I always recommend. If you don't know, just say a little bit and see how they react. And you'll know whether you should tell them more or not by their reaction. And she's the one who really helped me so much through all of this. I thought she was going to fix this, tell me how to make the attractions go away. And that's not at all what happened. I thought, okay, God, I found someone. Let's get to work. Let's make this go away. And she started talking to me about who I needed to forgive in my life and just all of this other stuff. And I thought, do you remember why I'm here? This is not related, but I started to realize that's how God was working in my life. And he was just showing me all of these things that my heart needed healed from, that I had just buried for years. So I wouldn't have known any of that if I wouldn't have finally talked to someone. So I definitely recommend, like, I have people write to me all the time, and I'm often the first person that they tell, which is wonderful. That's why I do what I do, to have that available. But having someone in your own life that you can sit down and talk to, it's not always easy finding that person, but I think it's so much more valuable than someone like me that you can't see or get together with once a week or anything like that. But the next thing that I would say would be to build your relationship with God. which was very, very difficult for me because I thought he hated me for being attracted to women. I thought he was very disappointed in me. I thought that I needed to fix it before I could go to him. You know, you hear that all the time, but that is, I guess, how I felt that, okay, God, I know, I almost like he was saying, okay, get rid of this and then let's come and talk. But that's not who God is. And I started to realize the more transparent I can be with him and talk out loud like I'm talking now, he loved that, and he loves that. He loves that connection and that intimacy with us. And that helped me just about almost more than anything, and what is still helping me today with every subject that I deal with, just building that and knowing he's not putting shame on me. He's helping that shame come off of me by knowing I can go to him and he's not pointing his finger at me, and he's loving me and wanting me to draw in closer to him, even when I'm an absolute mess. So that's another thing that
so good.
I would recommend.
I want to say too, just from a those are really great practical steps. And just too, if you've been walking with God for a while now and you have been experiencing him sustain you and keep you from that, and then you still, maybe sometimes you still have dreams, or maybe you still have those moments where out of the blue you feel like I could watch this right now, or I could go and do this right now, nobody would know. I just want you to know, like, if you were a human being and you were walking with God, you had those experiences in the past, there might be times where you just have a dream, or you might have like this temptation out of the blue to do those things. But know that doesn't mean that you're not free, and that doesn't mean that you're not forgiven for the past either, or that you can't continue to walk in that freedom, because sin is sin. And whether you are struggling with sexual sin, or whether it's just talking backbiting, talking about people, whether it's being greedy, just whatever the sin is, there will always be a time where you feel tempted to do something, but you are not your temptation. And that temptation doesn't mean that you're not free. So just continue to walk and be sustained by God, abide in God, and let him continue to keep you. And, also, you have to be responsible. You have to make your decisions of whether you're going to do something or not. So just continue to resist that. And Amy has so many resources on her site to help you with that. I have resources on my site to help you with that. So just know that, keep that in mind. So I just want to ask you two more questions. What are your advice for women who are currently married and struggle with this? And then we'll get into talking about a little bit about your book before we go.
Well, for those who are married, I'd recommend that they're as honest as they can be with their husband, which a lot of husbands may know before they get married. Some have no idea. So you would kind of have to gauge that with God and how you would approach that, or when. But I know I thought for myself, that's not why I got married, but I assumed, okay, once I get married, I love Kevin. I'm attracted to him. I want to be with him. I thought that was the end of that. And when it wasn't, I was so disappointed in myself. And I can be very, very hard on myself to begin with, but I kind of made this the biggest thing. And it really, even me kind of pouring shame on myself and self-condemnation and self-hatred, all of this on myself, that was an intimacy prohibitor in our marriage all by itself. So I would recommend, being as transparent as you can with your husband. They're all going to react differently, of course, but just knowing that there's hope for you. There's hope for your marriage. This doesn't mean that you can't have, intimacy in your marriage, emotional intimacy, sexual intimacy, spiritual intimacy. That doesn't mean that. This might sound funny, but my main recommendation would be not to make it the center of your thoughts concerning your marriage, because it can be really easy to focus on that so much that is what's causing a lack of intimacy in your marriage. But to just continually give it to God. God, help me, because it can be difficult. A lot of difficult situations can come up because it can affect sexual intimacy. So many levels of things that you don't realize until you're married, in different seasons of marriage. I know my husband, he's now home on the weekends, but he just recently decided he's staying home on the weekends after 4 or 5 years of being gone, traveling for ministry almost every weekend. So with my deep need for intimacy and him gone, it could be rough. And so during those seasons of thinking, okay, God, I'm married. You want this for me. Marriage is good. And my husband's gone. And you know the needs of my heart. And of course, that's again when I turn to God. But how do I do this in my marriage? So just the ebbs and flows of marriage, just working that out and knowing, okay, God, I need help with this, and talking to my husband, how can we see each other more? How can we work this out now? Because this is what I'm needing, just being very honest about my needs.
That's good.
Which I didn't even know what my needs were, actually. I didn't even know what they were. So just learning how to verbalize, okay, this is what I need from you, and talking about that. And it's not easy, but just knowing that it doesn't need to be and shouldn't be the center of our marriage, which it can very easily be if you're like me and trying to work it out and make it all go away. So
that's good. That's good. I was just going to say too, while we're on the subject, that would be a good blog post if you could write that, like how to express that you're struggling with, same-sex attraction to your spouse. That'd be a really good blog post.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Please write that. Please write that one day.
Yes.
Tell us about what you've already written, though. Your book, Longing for Intimacy, Hope for the Woman Struggling with Same-Sex Attraction.
Yes. That is a book that was on my heart for years and years, building and building. And it's really my story of everything that God has done up until this point. And the things that I learned, how I found freedom, what freedom actually looks like. That can be a very tricky word to use nowadays. Like, I'm set free from this, and I have found freedom from it. But sharing what that means in my life, it doesn't necessarily mean I don't have same-sex attraction anymore, but I don't have that.
It doesn't rule over you.
No, it doesn't rule over me. And if I find someone attractive, a woman, just like if it was a man, I can see that person and say, okay, and move on, not lust after them. Now that I don't deal with a lot of lust issues, that has helped a lot too. I thought most of it was the attraction, but it was a lust driving that. But that's all in my book as well, like how I dealt with a lot of this, what God taught me, and just encouraging other women who have either maybe they've never been in a relationship with another woman and they don't know what to do. They feel like they're the only ones. And they're in their church, nobody knows, or if they have been in a relationship with another woman or looked at porn. There's a lot of Christian women who they don't want to be in a relationship. They end up turning to porn as an outlet. Not all women, but a lot of the ones who write to me, because that's my story.
Mm-hmm.
But just encouraging women just in showing what God's done in my life up until this point. I'm sure I could add a couple chapters in a couple of years, but I'm not there yet. But there's hope. There's so much hope that I have found in intimacy. I was longing for that intimacy and that deep connection, and God started showing me that I can have that with Him And when I get that with him, it's just going to filter down to my other relationships, and I can have that intimacy with them as well.
Amen. Amen. Would you go ahead? Thank you so much for your testimony and your wisdom that you are sharing with us today. Would you go ahead and pray for our listeners, and then I'll tell them how they can get connected with you?
Sure. Lord God, I just thank you for everyone, Lord God, who's been listening. And I just pray that you encourage them to turn to you, Lord God, that you show them if there's any doubt in their mind, Lord God, that you're not shaming them, that you don't hate them, you're not angry with them, Lord God, but you are inviting them to come closer to you in the midst of their struggle, Lord God, whether they've never been in a relationship with another woman, or whether they've looked at porn or haven't, or whether they're even in a relationship right now with another woman and they don't know how to get out, Lord God, because she's become their entire life, Lord God. I pray that you show them, Lord God, that you want to hold their hand through this and walk with them into the freedom and the healing that you have for them, Lord God, which looks different for all of us, Lord God, but there is a way, Lord God, to honor you. And it's not a boring little box, Lord God, that it can feel like sometimes, Lord God. You have life in that for us, Lord God, when we walk with you. And I just pray for life for them, Lord God, to be able to walk in that freedom and free from shame. And Lord God, I pray that you place people in their lives, resources and people in their lives that they can talk to, be honest with and transparent with, Lord God. If they're married, Lord God, I pray that you help them talk to their spouse, Lord God, and that you help their spouse really understand and to see things through their eyes. Father God, this is all a process, which we don't like a lot of times, Lord God, but I thank you that it is a process, and you will be working on us till the day that we die. And I thank you that you never leave us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Amy. You can connect with Amy and purchase your copy of her incredible book, Longing for Intimacy, Hope for Women Struggling with Same-Sex Attraction, on her blog, longingforintimacy.com. Additionally, you can find her on Instagram and Pinterest. Her handle is at Amy Riordan. That's her last name is Riordan. And on her Facebook page, Longing for Intimacy. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose and Purity podcast with me, Titania Page. If you like this podcast, please show your support by leaving a review on iTunes. It helps spread the word so other women can find the show. You can also catch me on TitaniaPage.com, YouTube, and Instagram at Titania Page, where I have even more content for the passionate Christian woman. Love you all so much. Bye.